The call came at 3 a.m., just like always. "We need you at 415 Elm Street. Bad one." Maria Santos grabbed her cleaning kit and drove through the empty streets, wondering why this address sounded so familiar. When she walked into the house and saw the victim, her blood went cold. It was him. The witness from the Simpson case. The one person who could have proven she was right all along. Welcome to Vaulted Secrets. Before we dive into this story of hidden evidence, 20 years of careful observation, and the moment when a crime scene cleaner realized she knew more about murder than the detectives, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe some secrets need to see the light, hit that subscribe button. This story has been waiting 2 decades to be told. Maria Santos had been cleaning crime scenes for BioClean Services for 23 years, 8 months, and 12 days. Not that she was counting. To the police officers who called her in, she was just the cleaning lady, efficient, thorough, and invisible. Someone who showed up after the chaos, after the photographers and coroners and detectives had done their work and made the nightmare disappear. She'd seen everything. Gang shootings that painted entire rooms red, overdoses in luxury apartments where the needle was still hanging from a dead arm, domestic violence scenes where family photos lay shattered on blood-soaked carpets, suicides in teenage bedrooms where parents would never sleep again. Maria arrived at each scene with the same equipment: industrial-grade disinfectants, protective suits, scrapers, steam cleaners, and ozone generators. Her job was simple: return the space to a condition where human beings could exist again. Remove every trace of trauma, every reminder of violence, every molecule of evidence that death had visited this place. But Maria Santos saw things others missed. After 2 decades of studying blood spatter patterns, decomposition rates, and the way violence leaves its signature, she developed an eye that rivaled most forensic specialists. The difference was, nobody asked for her opinion until the Sarah Martinez case. It was a Tuesday morning in October 2019 when Maria first walked into apartment 4B at the Riverside complex. The police had labeled it a suicide. 19-year-old art student, apparent depression, note left on the kitchen table. Open and shut case. But the moment Maria stepped into that living room, something felt wrong. The blood pattern on the wall didn't match a self-inflicted gunshot. She'd cleaned up dozens of suicides, and the spatter was always different. More concentrated, different angle. This looked like someone standing 3 feet away. The supposed suicide note was typed, not handwritten, and placed too neatly on the counter. And Sarah's dominant hand, the one allegedly holding the gun, showed no gunshot residue under her fingernails, something Maria noticed when she carefully cleaned around the body. Maria took photos with her phone. Not of the victim, she'd never do that, but of the inconsistencies, the blood evidence, the suspicious placement of evidence, the way the apartment had been tidied before the supposed suicide. She tried talking to Detective Morrison, the lead investigator. He brushed her off. "Thanks for the input, but we've got it handled." The case was closed within a week, but Maria couldn't let it go. She started keeping files. Not officially, that would violate her contract and probably several laws. But she maintained detailed notes on every scene that seemed questionable. Digital photos stored on an encrypted hard drive. Police reports she obtained through public records requests. Witness statements that didn't make sense. Over the next 4 years, Maria identified 17 cases that the police had gotten wrong. Murders labeled as suicides, accidents that were clearly homicides, evidence that mysteriously disappeared between the initial investigation and the final report. Sarah Martinez became her obsession. Maria researched the girl's life, talked to her friends, discovered that Sarah had no history of depression and was actually planning to transfer to an art school in California. She had a boyfriend, Marcus Webb, who'd been questioned once and never followed up on. A boyfriend with a history of domestic violence and a gambling problem. Maria learned that Sarah had been planning to break up with Marcus the night she died. She told 3 different friends about her plans to leave him. None of this was in the police report. So Maria started watching Marcus Webb. For 3 years, she observed his patterns, followed him to bars, to his job at a construction company, to the apartments of other young women. She documented his behavior, his drinking, his violent outbursts in public. She collected evidence that painted a picture of a dangerous man who should have been the prime suspect from day one. But Maria was just a crime scene cleaner. Who would listen to her? That's when the second murder happened. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Thursday in March 2023. We need you at 415 Elm Street, bad one, 415 Elm Street. The address had been nagging at Maria for weeks. She'd seen it somewhere before. When she arrived at the modest 2-story house, the scene looked familiar. Another apparent suicide. Young woman, gunshot wound, note on the table. But when Maria walked into the living room and saw the victim, her world stopped. It was Lisa Rodriguez, 23 years old, waiting tables at the diner downtown. And Maria recognized her face from somewhere else. The photos on Sarah Martinez's social media. Lisa had been Sarah's friend. One of the 3 friends Sarah had told about breaking up with Marcus Webb. The blood pattern was identical to Sarah's apartment. Same angle, same distance, same staging. Even the placement of the suicide note was nearly identical. Maria's hand shook as she began her work. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a pattern. She worked through the night, documenting everything. Photos, measurements, observations. When Detective Morrison arrived at 7 a.m., the same detective who dismissed her concerns about Sarah Martinez, Maria made a decision that would change everything. "Detective, I need to show you something." Morrison looked annoyed. "Maria, we've been through this. You clean, we investigate." Lisa Rodriguez knew Sarah Martinez. They were friends. And the blood spatter patterns are identical. That's not possible. Sarah Martinez killed herself 4 years ago. No, she didn't, and I can prove it. Maria pulled out her phone and showed Morrison the comparative photos. The blood evidence. The placement of the notes. The similarities that couldn't be coincidental. For the first time in 23 years, a police detective actually listened to what Maria Santos had to say. The investigation that followed unraveled 4 years of sloppy police work and revealed a serial killer who'd been hiding in plain sight. Marcus Webb had murdered Sarah Martinez when she tried to break up with him, then staged it as a suicide. The police investigation was so superficial that he'd gotten away with it completely. Emboldened by his success, he'd continued dating young women, and when they tried to leave him, he killed them and staged the scenes identically. Lisa Rodriguez was his 3rd victim. There had been another, Amanda Chen, found dead in her apartment 2 years earlier, also ruled a suicide, also someone who tried to break up with Marcus Webb. Maria's detailed files became the foundation of the prosecution's case. Her photographs, her observations, her meticulous documentation of police oversights, all of it admissible in court because she'd been legally present at each crime scene. Marcus Webb was arrested, tried, and convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He's currently serving life without parole. But the story doesn't end there. Maria's work on the Webb case caught the attention of cold case detectives across the state. They started consulting with her on unsolved murders, asking her to review crime scene photos, seeking her input on cases that had gone cold. She'd kept files on 17 questionable cases over the years. Working with law enforcement, they reopened 12 of them. So far, they've solved 8, leading to 6 additional arrests and 2 exonerations of people who'd been wrongly convicted. Maria Santos, the crime scene cleaner who was supposed to be invisible, had become one of the most effective murder investigators in the state. The media attention was overwhelming. Maria appeared on true crime podcasts, gave interviews to investigative journalists, and was featured in a documentary about overlooked evidence in criminal investigations. Hollywood producers started calling about movie rights, but Maria just wanted to do her job. She still works for BioClean Services, still gets called to crime scenes at 3 a.m., still arrives with her cleaning supplies and protective equipment. The difference is that now, when Maria Santos notices something inconsistent about a crime scene, detectives listen. Her basement has been converted into a proper office. File cabinets full of cold cases. A computer system for tracking patterns. Walls covered with crime scene photos and evidence timelines. She works closely with a private investigator and maintains contacts with homicide detectives in 6 different jurisdictions. Maria has helped solve 23 murders. She's identified 4 different serial killers who were operating under the radar. She's exonerated 7 people who were wrongly convicted. And she's still just getting started. The families of victims seek her out now. Parents who were told their children committed suicide but never believed it. Spouses who knew their partners wouldn't have killed themselves. Siblings who've spent years wondering if justice was ever served. Maria meets with them in her basement office, surrounded by the evidence that law enforcement missed. She looks through their files, studies their photographs, and listens to their stories. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, she finds the inconsistencies that everyone else overlooked. Sarah Martinez's parents sent Maria a letter after Marcus Webb's conviction. It was simple. Thank you for seeing what we always knew. Sarah didn't give up on life. And you didn't give up on Sarah. That letter is framed on Maria's wall, next to photos of all the victims whose cases she's helped solve. Young faces, old faces, people whose deaths had been written off as suicides or accidents or unsolvable mysteries. People who deserved better than a case filed away and forgotten. Maria Santos had spent 20 years making crime scenes disappear. Now she spends her time making sure the crimes themselves can never be ignored. The cleaning supplies are still in her garage. The protective suits, the disinfectants, the steam cleaners, all ready for the next call. Because violence still happens, families still need closure, and someone has to remove the physical evidence of humanity's worst moments. But now Maria carries something else to every crime scene. The knowledge that sometimes the most important evidence isn't what you clean up. It's what you notice before you start cleaning. she still gets emotional at the difficult scenes. The young victims, the senseless violence, the families torn apart by loss. But she doesn't cry in her car anymore. Instead, she goes home, sits in her basement office, and studies the photos she's taken, looking for patterns, searching for inconsistencies, making sure that if someone got away with murder, they won't stay hidden for long. Because Maria Santos learned something that most people never discover. Justice isn't always served the first time around. Sometimes it takes 20 years of careful observation, detailed documentation, and one person who refuses to look away. Sometimes it takes a crime scene cleaner who sees more than blood and violence. Someone who sees the stories that death leaves behind and refuses to let those stories be erased. So I ask you, have you ever wondered about the people who clean up after tragedy? The ones who arrive after the police and paramedics and reporters have left? What do they see that others miss? What stories do they carry home with them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us about the unsung heroes in your community, the people who do the difficult jobs that most of us can't imagine. And if this story moved you, subscribe to Vaulted Secrets. We're here to uncover the hidden truths that surround us, the overlooked evidence that could change everything, and the ordinary people who refuse to let injustice hide in plain sight. Because sometimes the person who sees the truth isn't the detective or the prosecutor or the judge. Sometimes it's the quiet professional who shows up after everyone else has left, armed with cleaning supplies and an eye for details that everyone else missed. Thanks for watching, and remember, justice doesn't always come from where you expect it. Sometimes it comes from the people who clean up the mess and refuse to forget what they've seen.